Hey guys, hope you're doing alright. Hope you've had a great week. Thanks for tuning back in. This is Michael with Strange Shapes, and today we're making this infinite looping tunnel effect. It's a lot of fun, lots of crazy stuff going on here. You can edit the type as you want. It's just pretty cool. So let's jump in, get to it, have some fun, make something weird. Alright, let's jump in. So first we're going to go to new composition. We're going to label this one main. We're going to keep the resolution at 3840 by 2160, but as always, if you need to size that down, you can. You can do 2K, you can do 1080p, full HD, whatever works for you. Let's keep the frame rate at 30 FPS and the duration at 15 seconds long, and then we're going to hit OK. And then the first thing that we want to do is come up here to the shape tool. We actually want to change some of these parameters for the shapes up here. So for fill, we want to turn that off. So you can do that just by clicking on the name, making sure it's turned off, go to hit OK. And then for stroke, we want to turn that on. So we hit the name again. Let's make it a solid color and then hit OK. Now I'm keeping my stroke color at white. It doesn't really matter too much what the color is. White will make it easier to see. And then I'm going to do 5 pixels for the stroke width. And then I'm just going to come down here and make a small rectangle in the frame, just something kind of like that. Once you've made your rectangle, come up here to the pan behind tool. If you hold down Control or Command if you are on Mac and double click it, it'll center the anchor point in there, which is what we want. It makes it easier to move around, and it's important for when we resize it. So let's go ahead and center that anchor point, and then go back to the arrow, the selection tool, come down here to align it just directly in the middle. If you don't see that align tab, we can come up here to window, make sure it's checked off. Once you've got that shape aligned, we're going to select it. Let's come down here to toggle switches modes, click on that, and then we're going to make this a 3D layer just by hitting this button right here. Once we've done that, we're going to make sure the timeline's at the beginning of the comp. I'm going to hit P to bring up the position parameter. I'm going to click that stopwatch right there, move that timeline all the way to about 5 seconds, and then we're going to change the Z parameter right here so that the rectangle, see how it moves? We want it to move towards us and actually go off screen. For me, that came out to about minus 4,500, maybe a little more. Something kind of like that. We want it off the screen. So now what that'll do is we'll just have our rectangle and it'll move out and then go off like it's coming right at us. Last thing we want to do there is just alt click that stopwatch, type in loop and double click loop out, open parentheses, close parentheses. So now what that'll do is at the end of this, it'll start a new one and it'll just keep looping like that. Cool, we're on the way. Once you've got that, let's go over here, click that layer again. We're going to go to effects and presets, and I'm going to add the echo effect to that just by double clicking it. I'm going to collapse some of these frames on the right. My bar is very cluttered. Okay, that's cleaned up a little bit now. So now I'm going to come over here to echo, change some of these parameters. So we're just going to make the echo time point to 0. And the number of echoes, we're going to bump that up from 1 all the way to 25. And whoa! So now, something that's cool, we got a cool little retro tunnel. Looks like a old school retro game. This is already a cool effect, but we're just going to make this real crazy. So from there, let's make sure this layer is still selected. Go back to effects and presets, type in glow. We're going to double click that one to add it. And then we're not going to change anything on that first glow layer, but we are going to select it in the effects panel, hit Control D or Command D to duplicate it. And then we're just going to bump the glow radius up to like 65, just so that it gives it a softer glow, just like that. Cool. Main tunnel effect is made. But we want it to look a little different, so what we're going to do is come down here to effects. We're going to close this shape layer, then open it again. I'm going to close effects and transform. I want to open up contents, and then I'm going to open up rectangle 1, and then I'm going to go to stroke, and this is what I want to play with. So all that you need to do is just click this little plus button here next to dashes, because we want some dashes, you guys. We're making crazy dashes. Cool, we're getting there. Next thing I'm going to do is just close this on up. I'm going to select the shape layer 1 and I'm going to hit Control D to duplicate it. And then I'm going to move the timeline to the very beginning. I'm going to go forward 3 frames, and I can do that just by hitting the page down key 3 times because it goes forward 1 frame each time. So 1, 2, 3. And then I'm just going to move this second duplicated layer up 3 frames. So what that does is now we have more lines to fill up the space, and it looks cool, and then it gets smaller and smaller as we go towards that center point. For this shape layer though, we're going to open it up again, go to contents, go to rectangle, go to stroke, and then I'm going to open up wave, change that amount to about 50% just to give us a little bit more of a dynamic look. All right, guys, I'm going to select that shape layer 2. I'm going to hit Control D to duplicate it one more time. I'm going to hit P to bring up those position parameters, and I'm actually going to click that stopwatch once and then Alt click it once to kill all of the keyframes and all of the movement on this one because we want this one to stay still. And then I'm going to come over here to those shape parameters, and I'm actually going to do the opposite of what I did for the first one. So I'm actually going to kill the stroke on that, and I'm going to make the fill a solid color. Now the color that the fill is doesn't really matter right now because we're going to have an effect go over it anyway. So it can be black, it can be white, it can be whatever you want. I'm going to come back to the shape layer 3. I'm going to hit S for scale, and I'm just going to scale it up a little bit, like 106. Around there is probably good. This just ensures that it kind of hides when the echoes are made and looks a little smoother as new echoes are formed. All right, y'all, we are well on our way. I'm going to come back down here to this panel. I'm going to right click, go to new, go to solid, and I'm going to label this one fractal color 1. Everything else can stay the same. I'm going to hit OK. I'm just going to move this to the bottom so that we can actually see what we're doing. And then with that fractal color 1 layer selected, I'm going to come back to effects and presets. And I'm going to type in fractal because I want fractal noise. I'm going to go ahead and add that, and whoa, things start looking really weird. But let's change up these parameters. So to start, we're going to go over here to fractal type. I'm going to change that to dynamic. I'm going to go to noise type. I'm going to change that to block because we want a little bit more of like a pixelated look. I'm going to keep the contrast and brightness as is. And then I'm going to come down here to evolution and alt click that to add an expression. And all I'm going to do is type in time asterisk 500. Now what that's going to do is just animate that fractal noise in the background so it's moving. That is a trippy effect. Yeah. That's wild. But we're not quite going for that, so let's keep going. With that fractal color 1 layer selected again, I'm going to come back to effects and presets, go to colorama, double click it to apply, and things get psychedelic. Let's go ahead and soften this up a little bit. So I'm going to go to input phase. I'm going to find phase shift. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to alt click that stopwatch and just type in time times 50 because we don't want it to be too crazy, but we do want it to animate. And then I'm going to come over here and find blend with original on Colorama. Should be the very last thing you see. And I'm going to just make it 25% just to soften it up a little bit. And the last thing I want to do on this layer is just go ahead and make sure it's selected, click that toggle switches modes button, and I'm going to change the track mat here to shape layer 1. And now only that one shape layer will show the colors, which is what we want. Let's go over here, fractal color 1, make sure it's selected, hit Control D to duplicate that one. And then find Colorama on the duplicated layer, and we're going to make the blend with original 75% on that one. Then we're going to come over here, and we're going to change the new one's track mat layer to shape layer 2. Whoa, our tunnel's looking trippy. I'm going to go back to this bottom fractal layer one. I'm going to go over here to contrast, and I'm going to tone that down to about 15. That way there's not such an overwhelming amount of color, but you still get a really nice kind of color fill on a lot of this that complements the rest of the colors. So, all Our tunnel's looking good. Just for the sake of organization, I'm going to come over here to that newer fractal color 1 layer. I'm going to hit enter to rename it. Rename it fractal color 2. And then I'm going to duplicate fractal color 2. It'll automatically name it fractal color 3, which is what we want. And I'm just going to change this one's track matte to shape layer 3. And that fills in the background. So now, just to recap, fractal color 1 should have a track matte of shape layer 1, fractal color 2 should have a track matte of shape layer 2, fractal color 3 should have a track matte fractal color 3. Yep, pretty good. Those all sync up. If you ever get confused, just follow 1 to 1, 2 to 2, 3 to 3. Cool. All right, guys, once that's done, let's come up here to the text tool and let's add the word that we want. I'm just going to do loop because that's what I did in the intro, and I think it works well because we're looping things. Oh, I want to move that to the very top. We want that to be above everything else so we can see it. And then I'm going to do what I did to the shape, so I'm going to go to align. I'm going to align that to the very center, and I'm going to come up here to the pan behind tool, hold down Control, double click it so that the anchor point centers on that layer. And just like our shape layer, we're also going to come back here. We're going to toggle switches modes, and we're going to make this one a 3D layer as well. So then I'm going to drag this timeline to the beginning again. I'm going to hit P on the loop. I'm going to hit that stopwatch. And then I'm going to have this z-axis change again too. So we actually want the text to kind of start off pretty small. I'd say it should at least kind of fill that black rectangle in the back, and then I'm going to move the timeline all the way to 5 seconds and make it come at us and off screen. So for me, the value that I found was around 5337, but negative. And yeah, cool. So if you're doing a different resolution and it's different, just go out until the word disappears. Cool. And then just so that we all start at a good place, I'm just going to move the work area 3 frames forward as well so that it starts when those other 2 ones start, so that it doesn't start with like half of the effects not on there. So we want it to start 3 frames in so that we see everything. But we also kind of want the text to look like it's coming in from that crazy background. So I'm actually going to drag the timeline to the beginning of that work area. I'm going to hit the opacity keyframe, make it 0, move the timeline just to about a second, and make it fade in to 100%. So now it starts off as nothing, and it just kind of fades in. Perfect. But let's make our text look a little more cohesive with the rest of the comp. So I'm just going to click on shape layer 1. I'm going to select both of those glow layers in the effects panel. I'm going to copy them, Control C. I'm going to go back to that type layer and paste them, Control V. I'm going to move forward a little bit so we can see. So now there's that nice softer glow on there, but I want to change it up a little bit more. So I'm going to go to fractal color 2. I'm going to do the same thing. Just copy that fractal noise layer, go back to the text, and then paste that on there. And now it's looking real fractal noisy. But it's a little too dark for my liking, so on that pasted fractal noise effect, let's just find brightness, bumped up to about 50. And now we have a nice fractal noise effect on it, but we can actually see the letters, which is always a plus. All right, guys, then let's go up to about 5 seconds right when the text goes off. And I'm just going to shorten this guy so that this text layer ends right at 5 seconds. Perfect. And then what I'm going to do is duplicate that text layer twice. So Control or Command D 2 times. So now we have 3 of those text layers. And then I'm just going to stagger them so that the new one starts right as the old one ends. So just stagger them in the timeline like that. Now what that does is ensures that we have a constant looping of our word. And this also allows you to change up each word on the fly which is what we like to do, y'all. We like to be nimble with our text. So if I wanted to, I could have this say loop, and then if I wanted to change this one, I could make this a different word, and I could make this one a different word as well. But it'll keep the same kind of cohesion with the rest of the comp and keep looping. So pretty awesome. All right, everybody, we are getting there. Let's come back over here. I'm going to close that up just to keep it clean, and I'm going to make a new composition by hitting this button. I'm going to title it Blur Map. Everything else can stay the same, so I'm going to hit OK. And then we're going to go back up to the Shape tool, and I'm going to make a white rectangle, so I'm going to change the fill color to white, and I'm going to have it span the whole frame. Now, a fast way to do this is to just make sure you have the setting you want, so a white solid color rectangle, and then all you have to do is hold down Control or Command and double click that rectangle button or the shape button if you're doing a different shape, which we're about to do. So that'll fill out the entire frame, which is exactly what we want. So now let's deselect that shape layer so that it doesn't think we're about to add a mask. Let's go back up here, click and hold down to choose the ellipse tool. I'm going to make this black, so I'm going to change the color up there to black, and then I'm going to do the same thing. So Control, double click that shape layer, and boom, now we have a wide ellipse that fills the entire spot. But we're not done. Let's go back to effects and presets. Now I'm going to type in Gaussian blur because that's what we want to add. I'm going to double click to apply it to that ellipse layer, and then I'm going to bump up that blurriness to 600 and uncheck repeat edge pixels. So we want it to be pretty blurry, guys, but this is a little too big, so let's actually tone it down. Just something like that in the frame. Cool. Let's go back to main. I'm going to drag in that blur map composition all the way to the bottom, and then I'm just going to hide it because we don't actually need to see it, but we will use it in a sec. So then I'm going to deselect it, and then I'm just going to right click in the frame again and go to new, go to adjustment layer, and I'm going to label this one optics because we're using one of my favorite effects. I'm going to go back to effects and presets, and I'm going to type in optics because I want optics compensation. I want to be compensated for the optics. Let's come over here to the effects panel. Let's bump up that FOV to 100. And actually, this is already a cool effect, but we want to check reverse lens distortion so that we get this crazy look on the edge of our comp. Cool. Now, something that I did, you guys, is I actually moved this adjustment layer, this optics layer, below the text. This is totally optional, but if you don't, let's see, I'll show you. If you kept it on top, the text will actually distort as it gets closer, which might be perfect. That might be what you want. I personally kind of like the text not distorting, but the tunnel distorting instead. So totally up to you, but I'm going to move optics beneath those text layers. So let's come back down to this frame, right click again, go to new, go to adjustment layer, and I'm going to title this one Noisy Lens. Hit enter, and then go back to effects and presets like we like to do. Type in noise, double click that. I'm just going to bump up the amount of noise by 12% just to help with some of the color and the glow. And then for my final act, I'm going to go back to effects and presets and type in camera lens blur. Double click to apply that. I'm going to come over here, bump up that blur radius to about, whoop, not 300, that'd be real blurry, 30. Change the shape to octagon, and then under blur map, we're going to change the layer down to blur map. And now we have this cool blurred effect on the edges. Gives everything a nice kind of depth of field look. Now, if you find this too blurry or not blurry enough, you can come over here to the blur map, select that top shape layer, and adjust it as needed, and it'll actually affect the radius of the blur. So tweak that to your heart's content. I liked it pretty blurry on the edges, but you might not, or you might want it even more blurry. Totally up to you. That's it though. That's the effect. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, love to do this for you guys. Love to hear from you. Keep on keeping on. But I'm out. Hope everyone has a great week. and I will catch ya on the flip. All right, guys, I'll see ya later.